Hello, I'm John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from downtown Prince George. Beautiful day in Prince George, not quite as warm as it could be, but a little bit of snow even this morning in Prince George. But hey, so far so good. We're heading towards spring. I got a amazing, interesting, a friend, guest today. Her name is Brooklyn Derksen. Welcome to the show, Brooklyn.
Thank you, John. It's nice to be back.
Yeah, so how long was it that you were here?
I want to say about a year ago.
Yeah.
Approximately, give or take.
Yeah, give or take. Yeah. So I believe you're my guest on the podcast about 116 or so in that area. Mm-hmm. So we have been busy podcasting as many as 2 or 3 weeks sometimes.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, numbers are climbing.
Yeah. Yay. So now, tell us a little bit about you, Brooklyn. You are born in northern British Columbia.
Yep, born here, Prince George, born and raised.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you are active as a yoga instructor.
Mm-hmm. I'm a yoga teacher and meditation teacher. So what I do is I teach practices and stress release practices to help people get into the present moment, grounded, release stress, all those good things, because we really do live in a whirlwind of a world, and it's nice to have tools to calm the chaos, so to speak.
You are particularly involved in mental health, and specifically, and actually you are really involved in a fundraising. They call it Ride Don't Hide. Mm-hmm. And you've been involved with that for quite a number of years.
Yeah.
We've been a sponsor, the lead sponsor of that, for about 5 years. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about that.
So the Ride Don't Hide event is an annual event that was happening for a number of years for the Canadian Mental Health Association of Northern BC.
Correct.
Essentially, it was a fundraising initiative to help bring funds into the local community for suicide prevention programs, peer support programs, and other types of support programs for those who are struggling dearly with their mental health. So no matter what demographic they'd be a part of, if they had support at home, most of the time, those who were utilizing the programs at CMHA didn't have the adequate supports at home, but the Canadian Mental Health Association would provide a space for them to go if they really wanted to get help and better their lives from suffering with mental health and mental illness.
So was there a special date then that that event would take place, the Ride Don't Hide?
It was usually around June, the beginning of June, the middle of June, and then once the pandemic hit, it turned into a month-long event. That was more of a virtual style, so people could do and participate in their own time, in their own way throughout the month of June,
right,
rather than it being a specific day where everyone gathered in celebration of the event.
And now, this year then, with COVID moving behind,
I haven't heard anything about the event this year. I know that Canadian Mental Health Association and BC has undergone some new management, so some protocols are changing, some things are shifting, and I'm not sure what their plan is. I haven't heard anything personally, but I'm not sure what their plan is moving into this year, or if the event is happening at all this year.
So mental health has become, when I grew up, people didn't talk about it. Mm-hmm. And only until relatively recently, 10, 12, 13 years ago, it became more of an issue that people started talking about it and felt more comfortable about saying, I'm struggling, or I'm dealing with that, or trying to. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that, and also as it evolved yourself.
Yeah. So, I mean, of course, there's been a stigma around mental health for years and years and years, and I do believe that it's progressed in such a positive direction over the last 15, 20 years, like you said.
Yeah.
But even when I started talking about my mental health, I still felt the huge weight of stigma around it, and that was only 7 or 8 years ago now, maybe less. And so it's nice to see society moving in a more progressive direction around mental health awareness and mental health acceptance.
Yeah.
Because when I started talking about my struggles, I didn't really know anyone who was being open about it, especially publicly. It was still one of those things that you kind of slid under the rug, like, I don't
I
struggle.
remember having a discussion with you.
Mm-hmm.
That was before I was even doing podcasting, and that could have been 6, 7, 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it had certainly an impact on me, and yeah.
Yeah, it was a big, deep
and you still was
conversation.
struggling with it somewhat in terms of being public about it. And
I was,
remember
very
what
much
I
so.
told you is that you're such an amazing communicator. It's so important for you to be more vocal.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And it is, there's just been this little voice inside me that it's like, well, if not you, then who? Who's going to talk about it? Who's
Exactly.
going to be that voice? Who's going to spread awareness, and not only awareness, but acceptance for it?
Yeah.
And in that time that we sat down and had our first conversation, I was still struggling. I was still struggling with suicidal ideation and physical self-harm and all these things.
Yeah.
But I didn't want that to be a barrier between
Right.
around my worth, to be able to be seen and to be heard and to
Right.
speak on it.
Right.
And even though I wasn't being completely open around the struggles I was facing behind closed doors, and
Right.
with some I still knew that showing up
Yeah.
was going to be not only a big step for me,
Yeah.
but hopefully that would ripple out into the community around me, and there would be more conversation that followed.
Yeah.
And there was, and conversation
is.
did follow, and it not only impacted me and my social groups and my family, but then it extended out into the world beyond that scope, where we have a couple family businesses in the family, and there would be customers coming to the store, and there would be more open talk about the struggles and how worthy they are and how they are deemed respectable.
Yeah.
That it doesn't mean that there's anything bad.
No.
Doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with
No.
whomever is struggling. It just means that that is a truth that
Yeah.
needs to be acknowledged and addressed.
Yeah.
And seeing that level of acceptance expand after that conversation was a really cool experience for me, which is why I continue to speak whenever I can and share openly about my experience whenever it feels right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, Brooklyn, is that a better understanding about it by the public in general, the frequency of occurrence much higher than people ever imagined it, and there are likely different levels of, depression or in different forms of mental illness, and then some that are directly, indirectly. I never know quite where the one moves into the other disease, or the, for myself, I started talking about myself. I was born in 1940, liberated by the Canadian armies in 1945. April the 12th, and we went through a fairly difficult time, and during the war years, which left me with PTSD, very real, even still now, and the inner child, and the and much more recognized now. Add to that, which was likely a result of trauma that had happened during a period.
Yeah.
And the inner child was that being exposed to trauma, and it was only when in the late 50s that I got counseling for it. Very emotional, but very important, so to deal with,
To have those things held in the body and held in the tissues of the body for so long, when it finally is given a space to be seen and heard and felt. Because of course, if you can feel it, you can heal it. But if you can't allow yourself to feel it,
Yeah.
it just stays stuck. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, congratulations for going through that process, because I know how difficult it is to
Yeah.
sit with the really upsetting and traumatizing parts of our human experience.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's great beauty on the other side, and healing's not linear.
Yeah.
But every wave that you surf, you kind of find yourself on the other side going, oh, okay, so I'm feeling a little bit more balanced now. That thing that used to really trigger my emotions, trigger my trauma, is now maybe not triggering it in the same way. And so, yeah, kudos to you, because things stick in the body, and like you said, your inner child,
Right.
healing, and it's all part of the dance, the human dance.
So that then occurred very early in my life, around when I was 5 years old, and 4.5, 5 years old, seeing far too much that I didn't see, and trauma and PTSD and all the other kind of things around it. Then the other one that took me a while to figure out, as that it was not until I was 57 that I walked into a store, and I was in the store on 4th Avenue, actually, Books and Company. And I was walking in the store, and I don't know why, but I opened up this book, and, it was called Driven to Distraction.
Right.
And as I looked at it, it talked about ADHD. So, and I said to myself, oh my God.
Light bulbs.
That is me. And then the guy that owned the store, and they said, I was standing there reading, and he said, are we gonna buy it or what? No, I didn't say that. But in any event, I wrote in Dutch in it, now I find you who I am. So that then makes me kind of, and then obviously a lot of stigma attached to it, because is it mental illness? When I was not very good in school, obviously academic. I failed grade 3 and grade 7 3 times, and then they thought, should we send them to mentally challenged school, or do we get them a job?
Yeah.
My parents were very, very good, which is very important, as you well know. And, but they had to do something with me. So they sent me to, when I was 14, I became a furniture maker.
Wow.
And, but then I always kind of, we were liberated by the Canadians, so I had the dream of going to the land of my heroes. I wanted to go to Canada. I knew that from the time I was 5.
Yeah.
And then the other one was that I kind of felt I had failed because I was not successful in school. And then Holland is still kind of a country that says, okay, you want a job, so where are your diplomas? Well, I didn't have diplomas. So I kind of felt that, although I was very successful already on an early age, I was drafted into the Dutch Air Force Special Forces of all places. Can you imagine that? And then, and then I worked for, my dad managed a small lumber company, and then I got a job before I went to enter the Air Force, 3 years actually, 2 years as training furniture maker, then worked for a lumber company, and then started working for the largest importer just before I went into the Air Force, and then the 4 years after that, when I was 20, for a total of 6 years, and my career went very quickly up, and I became part of the auditing side, because I was very good at numbers. And I had all that, but I still felt I had failed, and then
of course, with that background, and that even just having failed seventh grade 3 times, just that programming in your mind going, oh, I failed again. Exactly. No wonder that it kind of, the seed was planted. No matter how successful you ended up being, there was still that wound that was like, well, yeah, but this happened.
Yeah. So then it made me then, after I came back from the Air Force and still was successful in my career, I had to know I always believed I could do it, and I was as good as everybody else, and if not, but I had to start over again, and so that's why I went to Canada when I was 24, and I left with one suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, took only $150, and when I came off the bus here, 2 blocks up, I had the books, the suitcase, and you've seen this one, $25.47. I'll just show it again to all my friends here. And it says underneath it, attitude, passion, work ethic, but follows success. And I knew that I was going to build a lumber mill. And so even with I couldn't speak the language, didn't know, so didn't have a job. Started as a cleanup man, and but even then I knew it was just a matter of time until I would build this mill. Not if, but when.
Yeah, absolutely.
And things became, was a bit of a challenge all the way through, and but it was not until I was 57, went into that store,
and saw the book,
that I knew ADHD, and the reason that I'm saying all of this is because you know already part of it, but the other part about it is that, and I'm still not quite sure, I always believed that ADHD, I was born ADHD. I believe.
Yeah.
And then I call it a superpower. I could not have done what I've done, and I'm not saying hurrah, hurrah, but through all the challenges and all the other things, that if it were not for the fact that I'm ADHD. Yeah. And I became, as you did, much more public about those issues. And in particular, at one point, I think it was May 31st, 2019, when I got the honorary doctorates of laws from the University of Northern British Columbia. And even there I did my presentation, and that was one of the first times that I was very public about PTSD, ADHD in combination with the inner child, and started being much more public about it.
I can only imagine the moment in that bookstore when you were reading, how overwhelming that must have been, just the flood of emotions, but also this feeling of feeling understood and understanding yourself in a whole new way.
Yeah.
I can only imagine how powerful that moment was for you. And I can tell that it really shifted your life in a big way.
No question about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But even then, right up to the time, through pure coincidence, that was in 1990, that although I already had the lumber company I started it in 1975, and people used to say, oh, you're so successful and this and that, but I had difficulty with it. I had difficulty communicating to more than maybe 2 or 3 people at the time. I just was not able to do that. I didn't have that confidence. And then by pure coincidence, my ex-sister-in-law kind of nearly physically dragged me to Toastmasters, and say, and I said, well, what are they doing there? And she said, well, you can just sit there and kind of watch. I said, well, if they're going to ask me any question, I'm not going to go. And I went to the first meeting, and I was just kind of sitting there and watching, and then somebody said, okay, John, tell us a little bit. I said, oh, my God, I'm out of here. Not quite, but then I went down the second time, and then I stayed there for 10 years, reached the highest level in Toastmaster, which is a distinguished Toastmaster, was probably one of the most active speakers on the speaking circus in Northern British Columbia. And it changed my life because it gave me confidence that, I was as good as anybody else, and that I had the ability, and that was another part that gave me confidence.
Being seen, being heard, and also getting to see that process through the entire journey.
Correct.
I'm sure it really helped to rewire some of those experiences from your childhood.
Correct.
That felt less successful.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. I thank you for your story.
Yeah. So, but
Yeah.
and then the other part about it is, then I wrote a book, and you have the books. Did you have my books?
I have this one.
Did I sign it?
You did.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
just for our guests, I'm just going to show them to them. Is that so? What I did is that probably was about 5 years ago. So that, but I've been thinking about this for a long, long time, and I said my book. I thought about it for 80 years. And I lived it 80 years, my life. I thought about it for 20 years. And it took me 2 years to write it. And the book is against all odds, quite successful actually, and it's an autobiography, but it's not about hurrah, hurrah, how successful John is, but in spite of it all, and through it all, and I wrote about it all throughout in the book, is that, stay the course, believe in yourself, and never give up. That kind of book. And and it was very, very important for me to write it.
How your adversities really brought
Yeah.
you prosperity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all of that, and some of it was very important for me to write it all. Even the not turn around and say, well, I can't really say it. No, I said if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it all.
Yeah.
The other one that you maybe not have, and I'm going to get you a copy of it and sign it for you,
Oh, thank you.
is this one, ADHD Unlocked.
Yeah.
And that again is precisely as I told you. It was not until I was 57 that I thought, oh my God, that's me. It took me 5 years before I talked to my doc about it, and who was a friend of the family, delivered both my daughters. And so one day I went into his office, and he said, why are you here, John? I said, I think I got ADHD. And so we together kind of figured it out. I did.
Yeah.
And then from that point forward, but even then I didn't talk about it much because, again, it was only, as you were saying about mental health, there was a stigma attached to it. So, what am I going to do? Go to my banker, and now I want to loan money for the bank, for my building my businesses. But then I say, well, just so you're aware, I have a mental health issue. And say, well, have a nice day, right? So they,
Totally.
but all of that has changed now, I believe, or is in the process of changing it.
I think we're definitely on the bridge of change right now.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
And it's resources like this that are really helping to bring that change into fruition.
Right.
Because not only was there stigma around mental health difficulties, there's also lack of education, lack of resources.
Yeah.
Whereas now we're in this world where so many professionals and so many brain researchers are giving their information through social media or through online courses or through this online platform and books and all these beautiful resources that we have to learn, just like you did in the bookstore that one day. You finally got to learn, like, oh, this is me, this all sounds like me, but without those resources, how can we really know? And doctors can only do so much. There's a sense of responsibility that comes with understanding ourselves and our experiences and looking to the resources to help us to navigate and make sense of them a little bit more, so as to communicate it better, so as to seek help in a more productive way.
And the other part about it, Brooklyn, in my opinion, in regards to ADHD, is that I've been in settings. I did a keynote presentation in Telqua not all that long ago, a couple of weeks ago on a Monday. There were about 200 people in the audience, I think. I had 22 or 23 people afterwards. They wanted to talk to me after I did my presentation. At least half of them told me that they either had or somebody inside their family had.
Yeah.
And there is virtually now not a day that goes by that somebody not tells me about that they have it in or have it in their circle. The other important part about it that I mentioned, it's not a liability, it's a benefit. was in a setting where I gave a presentation. I think there were about 20 senior individuals, senior meaning not youth, but people that were 35 to 45, all executives in some form or fashion, where I gave a presentation and here in Prince George, and they had asked me, one of three, to do a presentation talking about lumber industry, and okay, well that's okay, and so the other two were ahead of me, and I was the final one, and I thought, well, they talked to us so much about lumber, I wanted to talk about something else, writing books and ADHD potentially, and so I talked about that and that grouping, and there were 3 or 4 people, and 2 in particular that put up the fingers and they said, I have it, I've never really talked to anybody about it. Mm-hmm. You know, so...
Which is so common.
So common. Now, tongue in cheek a little bit, I get to the point that so many people are talking about it in a group, and then some of them that are listening say, darn, I wish I had it too. You know, because I call it a superpower.
Yeah.
It allows you to do those things that other people can't, you know, because I can do 20 things all at the same time.
Yeah, and highlighting that and really stepping into a more empowering truth around it.
Yeah.
Rather than, oh, I feel all over the place. You're saying, wow, look at all these things that I can juggle. Amazing. And what really landed for me when you were speaking was that you said it's not a liability, it's a benefit.
It's a benefit.
And that is something I so deeply resonate with in my own experiences with mental health.
Exactly.
Because I'm a very sensitive person, and I'm highly intuitive, I'm highly sensitive to my surroundings, sound, light, emotions. I can really read a room.
Yeah.
And I have this skill to pick up on subtle details that often can
Other people would not have.
Missed.
Yeah.
But then that allows me to smile at that person that I can sense maybe is feeling a little low, or ask that person how their day is going or what's good in their day if I can sense that they're sad. But these sensitivities have always felt like a lot growing up. They were so loud and they were so overwhelming that I didn't really know how to utilize them as a gift. It just felt like the world was flooding me with so much information.
And that is still from the time that I've known you, you know, in the last 6, 7, 8 years.
Yeah.
Only then have you become, you know you now, and you know the qualities that you have that go with it, and you now recognize it, and it's part of you, and you like it. That's who you are.
It took a journey of me not knowing if I could be here and live here to actually discover all the things that brought me a lot of grief.
Exactly.
Are actually my greatest gifts that I appreciate about myself now.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't gone on my journey of self-discovery, but B, also self-education around, okay, what's happening for me? What is my experience? What's going on? Because, and I may have mentioned this in the last episode, the last podcast we sat down, and the conversation we shared was that I mentioned, for the longest time, I just didn't know what led to my mental health struggles. It was just all of a sudden I woke up and they were there. And in a lot of self-exploration and therapy and neural rewiring, I learned that, well, that's not actually the case, because I was born into the world with these hypersensitivities that felt like a lot and very overwhelming, being a kid in school where so much is coming at you, and not having the tools to properly digest that was one level to my experience. Then also, of course, being highly academic and an athlete and going through all these experiences, following my passion towards accolades and all these things, I endured a lot of injuries through my sports career. I endured a lot of mental stress through my celebrations, I guess I could say, in singing. And I didn't realize that all had played such a role on my developing brain. And in conversations with my psychiatrist at the time, he had to repeat himself so many times like a broken record, because I just wasn't understanding that overworking my brain so much as a young person, as well as having those hypersensitivities, was actually causing an injury to my brain. I was overworking my brain, causing burnout in my brain before it even had the chance to develop. But I had no idea. And so then all of a sudden, I go through years and years and years of putting all this stress on my brain and my body and being in burnout for so many years, not knowing. All of a sudden, I'm suicidal, I'm causing physical self-harm, I can't navigate stress, the world is scary and anxiety-provoking, I can't go into social settings, and not knowing why, just thinking, oh, I lived this normal life that every kid lives, but not realizing that there was other things at play that I had to learn and to discover and to learn to see differently and rewire in myself before I could truly understand what was really happening.
Yeah, I found, the last podcast that we had about a year ago, you were still evolving, although I still very, very well remember 6-7 years ago when that was a tough time for you.
It was a very tough time for me. I was going through a lot of physical discomfort in my body, and to get you feel comfortable enough to talk, Yeah. Absolutely. Being diagnosed.
It was very, very important for me.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It was very important for me too, because, and you touched on this at the beginning of this conversation, that feeling of failure.
Yeah.
There I was feeling like it was so hard, and I'm going to get emotional, but feeling like it was so hard to just get up and live another day. Physically, my body was deteriorating. Mentally, my mind was deteriorating.
Yeah.
I was in so much physical, emotional, mental pain that I didn't even know if I could do it anymore.
Yeah.
And you hear diagnoses like myalgic encephalomyelitis and fibromyalgia, which is diagnosis I've received. And you think, well, where did I go wrong? Like, what did I do? And you cross paths with so many people who...
And you have an amazing family who's so supportive.
Which is amazing. And at the same time, all those who support, because they support and they love, they feel like they have suggestions that they want to give and they want to help you. And when you're in it, that can either be taken and received really well, or that can, for me, I felt like, oh, well, I'm going through this experience and now clearly I'm not healing right because you guys have all these suggestions for me, which felt over the top for me. And it wasn't until that my family and my support system realized that I had to heal for myself, that they couldn't heal for me, and that I had to find the journey to healing myself, that's when this synergy between our dynamic really started to happen, and they just held this space for me to go through my journey as I needed to go through it, instead of, hey, Brooklyn, have you tried this? Hey, have you tried this? This is what I read, or this isn't so, or this is what's going on, instead of all of the flood of information.
And then
it was more so an accepting space being held for me.
And then the other part is you started to become proactive.
Yes. So that weaved into a lot of self-education for me, because we talk about stigma. Myalgic encephalomyelitis is probably the biggest stigma experience I've ever had, even more so than mental health, because of the nature of it. It is a condition in the brain, a disharmony between the brain and the body, and they're not in communication with each other. And so what happens is the processing time, the processing in the brain slows down, and it can't quite make sense of all of the surroundings that are happening. And this weaves into my hypersensitivity with sound and light and all these things. But you just go through life like that, and you think, oh, well, this is normal, right? And then you discover, oh, actually there's something deeper going on here. And it may not be something that I can shift and change. Maybe it is, but it also may be something that I brought into the world with me, and it's part of my journey and it's part of my lesson, and learning how to live a life that accommodates this experience. Like you did with your ADHD over the years, you figured out how to create it into a superpower, and how to program it for yourself as this benefits me. And all of these other experiences like ME, FM, and mental illness, they really feed into that same thing. Well, how can I rewire this into an empowering truth?
And help others.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's when I really, a number of years ago, that's when I really started looking into, well, what can I do to help myself?
Yeah.
What am I needing?
Yeah.
What needs in me are not being met that I can rise to? And for me, and this isn't the same for everyone, but for me that came down to yoga and meditation and a lot of therapy and getting in touch with my inner child as well, and rewiring a lot of the painful experiences from my past with the wisdom that I have gained in the present.
Yeah.
And that changed everything for me.
Yeah.
Because then I was no longer operating from a place of suffering, and I was operating from a place of awareness and empowerment.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So before you put that down, so I got these cups.
I wonder where from.
Yeah, I have to say something about them because these are very unique here, and I had somebody that came here last week and you say I'm gonna keep it, and I said okay. It's your mother that made them, and she's a friend as well and has a store in town, Van Horlik, and the trophies, and that has been in the family for a while, right?
They opened as the trophy and award business in 1969. My grandma, and with the help from my grandpa and her dad, they all built a business from the ground up. And my grandma, I mean, she was a pioneer in business. Women weren't business people back then.
No.
But she said, no, I am. I'm a mother and a businesswoman, and I'm going to make my name in the world. And sure enough, she did.
That's 54 years ago or something? 69?
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. Oh my goodness,
Yeah. And it's been here all that time, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, she found this niche in the market, but extremely supportive of you, your family, yes, and your mom and dad, so. And, how many siblings do you have?
So it's me and my brother.
Yeah. What's his name again?
Austin.
Austin, yeah.
Yeah.
Is he older than you?
He is. He's 2 years older than me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I grew up with my cousins, so we kind of grew up like siblings, but they are my auntie's kids, and there's Rebecca, Genevieve, and Tanner, and so they're my cousins.
Yeah.
But still just as close.
Yeah, obviously. So these are very serious issues that we talked about, and very important ones.
Yeah.
That you have helped a lot of people, and you being so honest and open about it for one. And then the other thing that I sometimes think about is that, and I don't know as much about it likely as you do, but that depression really is something that is fairly common. And mental illness, is that a mental illness? Is it a disease, or is it that people are going through periods of it? I've read that some serious illnesses like cancer, something, or a very other serious illness could potentially lead into mental illness or something like that.
Absolutely. For me, and all the research I do and all of the self-educating I do, and also in conversations with other health professionals that I work with, I do believe that depression or periods of depression is a part of the human experience. It kind of goes with the vast array of emotions and feelings and experiences we get to have as humans. And so while there's ecstasy and euphoria and extreme joy, there's also the low end of the spectrum. There's depression, there's pain, there's suffering, there's grief. And there's space for both to be at play, and they're both welcome here. They're both a part of the journey. But when we're stuck in that low end of the spectrum, that can happen, is you can get stuck.
Yeah.
Because there's an element to depression that feels very finite, like this mood is so low, there's no happiness on the horizon.
Yeah.
It will never improve.
Yeah.
And that's the tricky part to depression, is what I found for me was that it felt so permanent, like I couldn't find my way out of it.
So what then, is it in some cases medication that helps?
I think it's going to be an individual approach for everyone, because while depression can be caused by life experience, so trauma, going through difficult experiences, PTSD, which was true for me. Sometimes it comes down to things like diet, exercise, lifestyle, and maybe there isn't an actual event that created the depression, but maybe it's that the diet is full of sugar and it's
very much
interacting with the brain chemicals, because sugar causes this with the dopamine response in the
never
brain.
been fully recognized as such, only relatively recent 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
Sugar is very, very
and
bad
it's
for
a
you.
huge part of the world, because it's in everything, and with so many things being processed nowadays, it's the processing that foods go through causes that same digestion response in the body. So anything packaged, anything that has high starches, or all of these fancy sugar names like cane sugar or agave syrup, they're all just sugar, and they all do the same thing in the brain once it's digested, and that is cause imbalance.
So it becomes then also an issue of diet in terms of understanding healthy living. What food that you eat and that you should understand, and what is good for you, just as healthy or just as tasty eating healthy, then the opposite, but the effect on your body, in the long term or even in the short term is not a good one.
No, I mean, diet can truly impact everything in our body. Digestion, hormonal balance, especially for women, balance of brain chemicals, all these others. Our human body is so miraculous. It's just the most magnificent
so forgiving
design.
To a certain extent, right?
Yeah, and if we are continually putting it to the
abusing
test,
it's
it's going to get worn out.
Yeah.
And because our bodies love us so much, though, it will try to create a new homeostasis in order to respond to what we're putting it through. And a lot of the times, if we're not living a lifestyle that is supportive of our body and our natural brain, the homeostasis will be a depressed state, because it's just trying to navigate the world. It's trying to navigate what we're giving to it.
So that again is very important for you and for us all together. My wife is very good at it, actually. She's very much into healthy eating and healthy diets, and she's vegan, and I call myself 80-20. But then I'm also into fitness. At 82 and a half, I'm supposed to be the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America. Can you believe that?
Congratulations. Yay! Which is also a really important piece of the puzzle is physical activity, whether it's in the gym, whether it's yoga, a walk.
And that's the point I'm making.
Yeah.
Is that doesn't mean you have to become like an Olympian. Well, I like it because it gives me my goal.
Yeah.
But the objective is that keeps me healthy, fit, my body and diet. And then the other part that I believe is so important a lot of times is that if I look at this, not so much the 2547, well, that's important too. Oh, you know how much my books cost? You don't have to buy it. Tell me how much it costs.
Let me take a guess. 2547?
That's the head use, all the books. So what I say is attitude, passion, work ethic.
Yeah.
Attitude is very important, in my opinion, is that, and some people, I don't know if that is, I've always had a positive attitude. If it rains today and I want sunshine, I'll swear it's sunshine tomorrow. There is no question about it. Other people are just the opposite and saying, well, it's sunshine, but it probably will rain tomorrow. And I try to avoid that.
Yeah.
But I'm not blaming anybody that does. But some people, if you have a mindset that has trained itself to being positive, that's helpful.
Oh, an attitude of gratitude shows a world of a difference in regards to happiness and joy. And there's a lot of studies around this too, is the energy goes where the focus flows. So essentially, if you're noticing all the negative in life, the negative will expand, the negative will multiply. Whereas if you can, and I'll be honest, I was stuck in that loop for a long time. And that's when I was dealing with suicidal ideation and depression, because all of the heavy in my life was taking up all my attention.
Yeah.
But when I started to shift things and feel gratitude and shift my mindset, every day I woke up into, well, what good is going to happen today?
Yeah.
Like, how is today going to be the best day?
Yeah.
Or how is this difficult experience I'm having?
Yeah.
How am I going to make it the best dang thing that happened to me?
Yeah.
And approaching life in that way, it allowed me to step out of the difficulty with suicidal ideation and depression, and allowed me to step into a new reality of life where I am happy and fulfilled and joyful.
In combination with all the other things that you did.
Doesn't mean that every day is perfect.
No.
Doesn't mean
Doesn't
I still have hard days that feel low.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It just means that I don't stay there.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
allow myself to feel that, because it is honorable.
Yeah.
Having tricky emotions and feeling pain and feeling down, that is honorable and to be appreciated, because there is a message in there.
Yeah.
But once I've sat with it and I've seen it and I've heard it and I've acknowledged that part of myself that needs the support, how then can I appreciate it, let it go, and step into what's going to bring me joy and peace?
Now, the other thing that I want to say, I'm going to give you this book here. I'm going to sign it for you before I forget it. But the other part about this book is that this one is not only for the people with ADHD, but it is also meant to be for people that are slow learners.
Yeah.
Or people that have been exposed to trauma. And what comes to mind a lot of times, respectfully, is people in First Nations, in particular, that have had a tough time and became slow learners. And I wrote a book in such a way that you can virtually start it anywhere in the book and read and then go back to another part. And, it has become very popular, actually.
Well, and just that, it's so important because, like you touched on a little bit there, going through difficult experiences can change the brain, and it can change, it can change the wiring. And so being able to open up a book at any page and perhaps find some insight and some wisdom that can land for you and speak to what the experience is can really help to then continue reading.
Yeah.
So for example, someone like me who I don't believe I have ADHD, I may never pick up that book, but knowing that, oh, I've had trauma, I've had difficult experiences, I've had trouble learning, knowing that, maybe I open to a page that touches on that trauma.
Yeah.
And then I go, oh, this book's very interesting to me. I'm going to read the whole thing. Even though I don't personally identify with ADHD,
Right.
there's value in there.
Yeah. No question about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other one, I've done another book, and it's coming out in July.
Exciting.
2 months from now, actually. And that one is Finding Your Passion, Living the Dream. And the reason that I wrote that book is that there are so many people that say, I hate my job, and I said, don't start something different, because everybody, anything around you is getting adversely affected by you, and if you have that, or take that to home, you're then not a happy person likely, and to have that, find that passion at some point in life. And there are about 10 or 12 people that we make references to, that we interviewed, that have had an experience where they found that at a later part, maybe in some cases, and went into a new direction, which changed their lives, So, and then that, what you then do, like I do, and I love my job, and I love what I'm doing. And saying, so John, with all the challenges that you had and all the things that were difficult, how is your life? I said, well, I'm living the dream. I live in the most beautiful country in the world, the most beautiful province in the world, and I love what I'm doing. I get up at 5:30 in the morning, I always make my bed, and I'm always in a hurry when I always think I'm late, so.
And I think that feeds into the holistic approach to mental health care that we touched on, where we touched on food being an important part and nutrients. We touched on exercise or activity being an important part. We've touched on surroundings and environment being an important part. We've touched on mindset. We've touched on support, which support is very important. I mean, having a supportive conversation where you can be seen and heard actually reduces inflammation in the body. It's scientifically proven to release endorphins, to release oxytocin in the brain, which is like they call the love chemical. It brings joy. And so I really believe that feeds into this holistic approach, where even if you are stuck in a job or an environment that doesn't feel desirable to you, and it may not be conducive to life to be able to step out of that in a timeline that feels like you want to, there's still possibility in, well, what can I do? How can I look at this and approach this in a way that allows my surroundings to be more supportive? And if you can step out of the surroundings that are causing you grief, that's amazing. That's not always the reality for people. Sometimes they have money to make, they're in a difficult time, they need that job, whatever their reason may be. But how can they show up to that job that feels undesirable sometimes and bring the energy that they want to feel?
Exactly.
How can they allow that feeling that they're searching for in their job come from them versus them searching for it in their surroundings?
Exactly.
And approaching things from that space really brings a lot of empowerment, because then it doesn't matter what the surroundings are. You're bringing your own peace.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's really why I feel so passionate about the work I do, because I teach meditation. And a lot of people have these thoughts about what meditation is, and to me as a teacher, meditation is simply curiosity. meditation is simply the act of welcoming. It's not changing anything. It's not trying to calm down the mind. It's not trying to induce relaxation. It's simply allowing the entire experience of the present moment to be here, unjudged.
Exactly.
And that's very important, because when we desire things, it really pulls us out of what's here. And it also pulls us out of the magic that's here.
Yeah.
So when we can step back and really revel in this moment, there's a lot more beauty than you really think, even in tricky situations, even in tricky surroundings. And I truly feel that that is going to be also a new element to mental health care that's going to grow.
Yeah.
Because we're in this stage of awareness coming to the forefront, and people becoming more comfortable to talk about it and to get help and to get medications, which is also part of the deal. Medications, some people need them, for some people they don't work.
Very much part of it, right?
Right. And at the same time, how can we be in this moment in full acceptance? Because with mental health, and I'm sure you experienced this in your journey, there's this temptation to want to wish it away.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I feel depressed. I can't feel depressed. Like, let's sweep that under the rug. Or I don't want to see that right now. Or I don't have the time to deal with this right now. When in reality, maybe that little creeping thought just needs 5 minutes of your time to be seen and heard.
Yeah.
And then it can actually be let go.
Exactly.
And then it's not in you anymore.
Yeah.
And so
learn to accept it.
Yeah.
As part of life.
Exactly. So with that, I'd love to do a little practice if you're game for it.
Okay.
And whoever's watching can join in. Hopefully, if whoever's watching is driving, don't know where to look, maybe pull over or just listen to this and embrace it and try it again later. But I'd like to do like a presence exercise with you, if you're willing.
Okay.
Okay. So just start by closing your eyes. Just allowing your eyes to flutter closed. And with all this talk of being said, where we're talking about enjoying the present moment and being fully in the present moment, let's take a moment there ourselves. So, with your eyes closed, just bring your attention to the surface you're sitting on. Really get curious about all of the tiny little contact points under your body that meet with the chair, with the floor. The surface beneath you, fully holding you, fully supporting you. Now allowing your senses to do as they're designed to do, just allowing them to roam free as they gather information. So you may tune into sounds outside the room, hearing the bustle of the world. You may tune into sounds inside the room. Attention coming a little bit closer to the body now. As you tune into the space of your mouth, noticing any taste in your mouth. And while you're here, notice if it's available to soften your jaw even just a little bit more. And bring your attention to the space behind your eyes. Notice if there's any colors or forms dancing behind the eyelids. And finally, tuning into the space of your nose as you feel the brush of air in and out of your nostrils. You might notice the air feels a little bit cooler on those inhalations and a little bit warmer on the exhalations. Now here, really tuning into the natural rhythm of your breath. Life moving to you and through you in the form of oxygen. In every moment, it's your own unique rhythm. You might continue your focus on the space of your nose, or you might land into a space that feels a bit deeper within your body. Tuning into your center, wherever your center is. It may be in your heart space, it may be in your belly or your pelvis area. Where's your center today? Just really feel into it. Noticing how the breath travels from that space in the nose all the way through to your center, expanding at your center on those inhalations. And settling, dispersing from your center on those exhalations. And without trying to change it or fix it, just allowing the breath to be in its natural rhythm here. Just noticing the qualities in your breath. Maybe it feels smooth and fluid. Maybe it feels a little bit more rugged or choppy. Maybe it feels deep or shallow. There's no right or wrong, just noticing what's here for you. You may or may not notice the mind coming into thoughts. This is totally normal, totally human. You are a human with a brain that is designed to think. We're not trying to change that or fix that here. Simply being with it. Notice if you get distracted on a train of thought, if you can come back to this awareness of your breath, tuning into the qualities, the pace, the rhythm, where the expansion happens in your body. So as the fluctuations, the turbulence in the mind comes and goes, you may notice that it comes and goes like the wave of the breath, just like the ocean. And luckily, we have this internal wave of the breath to anchor into whenever the waves of the mind get out of control. A space of calm, a space of peace, and amidst any moment of chaos, you could say. Now just taking a moment to pause and check in with how you're feeling, how this little practice felt for you in your body. If it felt good, that's wonderful. If it felt challenging, that's perfectly okay. Just notice. No judgment, no right or wrong. What's here? And when you're ready, in your own time, in your own way, start rubbing your palms together. Once you've created some warmth, putting your palms over your eyes, you can keep your glasses on, just really noticing the warmth from your palms on your face, on your eyes. Maybe your eyes start to flutter open here as your hands fall. And just bringing your gaze onto something that brings you joy. It could be anything in the room. What sparks just a little bit of joy in you? coming back to the conversation.
Good.
How do you feel?
Feels good. Relaxing.
Relaxing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It's funny what happens when we can really land into what's here.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's impactful for me too.
Well, it feels good for me because I trust you, and you can, as I listen to you, I go with your emotions that you send to me, so.
Amazing. Thanks for doing that. Thanks for being a good sport.
No, I love it. As always, this was, and for all the years that we've known each other, to again see you emerging from who you are and playing such an amazing role and creating the awareness for others.
Yeah.
Same for me. Who you are is important to share with other people, that give them confidence, that they can be also who they are.
Yeah. Beautifully said.
Thanks, Petra. I'll give you a big hug, but we got our things on, but I'll give you a big
We'll hug.
hug after.
Oh, we'll hug.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's a
Thank you
pleasure to
having
be
you
here.
again. And we'll do it all over again, hopefully next year.
I hope so. Such an important conversation. It's always changing and shifting, and I feel like you and I always go a layer deeper every time we get to chat.
And that's so important, and hopefully it will give inspiration to others, and that is the objective, that we want to be us so that they can look at us and saying, we have been there, we've seen it, and you can be okay.
Absolutely. So, and our experiences being different in how the experiences unfolded, yet we can come together and still agree on the same things and understand it in the same way.
Exactly.
The experience isn't what matters. It's really the coming together to support is what matters.
Yeah, you're special. I love you.
I love you.